Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 63 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Patrick Toner, who is our subject matter expert on really all things endpoints at XenTegra, but specifically IGEL. Patrick's background is as an IGEL sales engineer. He's a XenTegra solutions architect these days, but formerly working for IGEL and really helping customers solve challenges using a thinner Linux operating system. Patrick, how's it going?
Well, I'm doing good today. Thanks for having me on today. I can say I'm doing very well after last night's Monday Night Football game. The Eagles actually looking like potentially a contender. So I'm pretty good today. Thank you.
Now, you never bring up politics, religion, or football.
Yeah. Well, in Philadelphia, football basically is a religion. So the Eagles it's very serious there.
We're talking to people, if not hundreds, if not thousands, maybe hundreds of people that aren't in Philadelphia. Sorry. It's just a word of guidance for everybody out there.
That's true.
Or sports is now a religion, and you didn't do a bad job of it. Sometimes people bring it up and like belabor it. I could have just skipped over it. Nobody would have cared probably. So, hey, you've been doing a lot of work or some work, and I owe you a meeting at some point to go over more of this. But now that you're not at IGEL, you use Windows. You use IGEL Linux, you use maybe Stratadesk Linux, you have Google Linux, which I call it Linux. I don't know if Google calls it Linux or not, the Chrome OS Flex. And has your thoughts on how you perceive that world, has that changed at all on where you came into XenTegra from the IGEL side of the world?
Yeah, a little bit. Especially I would say the one for sure, Google. I mean, what they're doing with OS Flex is pretty interesting. IGEL and Stratadesk have been in the game for quite a while. IGEL, obviously, 20-year-old company. Stratadesk, I think they're about somewhere around 10 years. And of course, Google has, they have they've had their Chromebooks out, and Google's search engine's been around for probably at least 20 years. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but they had the company Neverware. And then they ended up fully acquiring them. I guess they funded them and acquired them. Google's definitely trying to make a play in this space, and that's been an interesting, kind of realization for me. Where I'd seen Neverware a handful of times when I worked at IGEL, but they seem to be full steam ahead with their line with what they're calling OS Flex now, Google OS Flex, and it's pretty interesting. It's just, and I think to your point, it is a Unix-based OS, I believe. Underneath
Linux.
Yep.
Linux. Hey, so let me ask a question like this. You came into XenTegra coming from IGEL, pretty convinced that IGEL was the best thin operating system for enterprise computing. So not Windows, so not fat OS or thick OS, but thin OS of some type. Do you still feel like IGEL has the best solution for enterprise in user computing?
Yeah, for sure. I think out of the three, IGEL still is sitting, the king of the hill right now. And especially in the enterprise space, there's a lot of features that are just there for IGEL's solution, right? Things that were really put into the solution because of a lot of customer demand, customer requests. Chris and I, we'd been part of those types of deals in the past. So for sure, I mean, IGEL's been more purpose built. Stratadesk as well, but they've come a long way with the features that they have. But today, IGEL's still the leader in that space. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out here in the next few years. I think, hey, look, it's like anything, right? Competition is good for everybody, right? It's gonna push all of these different companies to innovate, set themselves apart, and that's good for the customer. It's good for all of us.
Yeah. So Patrick, can you see my hand in the webcam?
I can. Yep.
If you look at my knuckles, there's many, many, many scars on my knuckles where I've learned what not to do. That to me is really the IGEL story. They've got 20-ish years. Chris can clean up what I said and give you the exact years, but they've got lots of scars on their knuckles where they learned what they need to do, or customers came to them and said, hey, I needed to do this or that. And that's some of the benefit you have when you're just old. I mean, you've learned how to, use the proper tool for the proper job, and grabbing that crescent wrench and trying to take off that specialty nut on an engine, man, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. You've done it once. You got the scar on your knuckle to prove it.
Absolutely. Just with time, with the maturity of the platform. Another thing I didn't mention, Andy, probably worth mentioning, another thing that really sets IGEL apart is the community. having that, 8,500 plus user community, something that was built over, many years, is just a huge deal. I mean, I talk to guys all the time and just technical people. There's a few solutions out there. I know Jamf is a popular one where people love their user community, but they're few and far between. You don't have a lot of technology companies that have really good user communities where they can quickly find information. For some reason, a lot of tech companies just don't put, they don't invest in that. And IGEL's done a good job of investing in that.
Well, that's right. It's like being in the wild and you're in a herd of, I don't know, wildebeest. You're just much better off in that herd, no matter how big and strong you are. Standing out by yourself, you're better in that herd, and you have to realize that as that group. And IGEL is really good about including the rest of the eco. They even include some of the competition in what they do, because they know, like you said, all ships are going to rise if we do it together. And even, I was at an event last week and there was a lot of representation from Microsoft at the IGEL event, because Microsoft sees what IGEL is doing as a way to help grow their ultimate goal, which is, desktop as a service coming out of Azure. So they've embraced a Linux endpoint for the EUC enterprise computing space. Hey, we got Chris Feeney join us. Chris, how's it going?
Good, guys. I was wondering if I jumped into the right podcast for a minute there, but I appreciate the conversation. And for the first time ever, just so you know, I took the plunge and I am joining from a ABD, running a Zoom call, offloading that down to my very nice LG all-in-one. So hopefully the audio is going well and everything. I'm using an EPOS. So I'm throwing out all the IGEL ready vendors because I'm trying to make sure that I actually use the product on a daily basis, and hopefully it's coming across well. And but you're right. I echo a lot of the things, right? Competition certainly keeps you on your toes, and we all need that, right? We need certainly co-op. I would say, frenemies is another term, right? We're all in the EUC space, and we deal with the same challenges and stuff, and it's good to sometimes see how somebody else tackles the problem when you might have over-engineered a solution or something. It's like, actually, it's a little more simple than that.
So I was listening to a podcast on Tesla recently, and I don't know exactly what the reasoning for this was, but the stated reason for giving away all their patents is they wanted, all the rest of the electric car vehicle world to come up quicker so that they would have a more addressable world to exist in. That's what I see IGEL doing, right? It's we all need to get going together, because if we don't, then we're just all going to sit here and kind of sputter, only addressing a small part of the market, and we need to address a larger part of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've been in one particular industry, kind of keeping my eyes on, having a pulse on when are we going to see a gradual or a significant shift to the cloud, and that's industry is healthcare. And I began looking for this about 6 years ago, but I would say this year specifically starting to really see that shift. And it's becoming more and more. And generally what the trend is this is one that came up, right? We were on a call yesterday where the on-prem solution, they were running off of Nutanix, for example, and they didn't renew their Nutanix maintenance. The hardware, probably for what they were using it on, was probably fine. Just they decided not to renew it, and therefore the option they chose was, let's just go DAS. And so they decided to opt for that. And so how many more situations are like that, maybe where they either have a hybrid scenario, but they're beginning to make that jump. And so I'm writing these things down as they come across, but I could see certainly a shift as this time goes on, and whether it's all Microsoft like my ABD right now, or a Horizon or a Citrix combo. So
Chris, that's going to tie right into what we're going to talk about here in terms of the podcast, the blog we're reviewing, which, by the way, which is not.
It's funny. The customer call was on yesterday. They are rolling out these LG devices, these all-in-ones, basically the same model you see on the screen there. The one that has the RFID reader built in, the white one. Yeah, that one like that.
Yeah, but hold on. So just so I am actually using an LG all-in-one, but I'm using Zoom Local, because when I tried to do it for my VDI, whatever reason, somebody's changed something on the back end, and all of a sudden offloading doesn't work anymore. So I'm having to do it from the local Linux OS,
Mhm.
an LG unit that came shipped with IGEL on it. Tell the viewers so are you offloading the Zoom session from the AVD desktop to your local unit?
Yes.
How do you know you're doing it? Just give the users some feedback, because a lot of people don't know if it's working or not, other than they got a bad experience or good experience. What are the telltale signs?
It works. For Zoom, it's super easy. I mean, in the virtual desktop, in my case, my AVD, I joined through my calendar, right? Outlook, essentially. I joined in the Zoom local client inside of the Zoom VDI client inside of the Horizon, get all mixed up, inside of my AVD, fired up and joined. My camera, I can see the light is turned on, it came up. If I were to probably pull up my local processor and see, what's going on there, but
so Chris, the first thing is whether it works or not. That's step one. And
correct.
then the next step is from a user experience, not the technical guy in you, but from an end user's perspective, how will they know it's optimized?
That's a great question. Teams does it. Let me see if Zoom has a way to let you know. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, it does. So in Zoom, if you go into the settings,
guys, before you go into nerd mode, if I'm a user, how do I know if it's working optimized or not? What do I look for and see?
I guess that's my point, is the user really shouldn't have to worry about it, whereas the geeks should.
All right, Patrick, you want to give it a shot? How does a user know whether it's being optimized or not?
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to the performance that the user is going to know. It's pretty.
And what are they looking for, Patrick?
I mean, they're gonna notice the video is more consistent. It's not going to be choppy. The audio is going to come through nicely.
Well, no, Patrick, the user who's actually using the system, that is the presenter or the one using this system, how do you know? Not the end user, not the can you hear me? Am I latent? Blah blah blah. It's how do you, as the end user, know it's not optimized?
There's two things that could happen. One, the webcam might not work if it's not optimized. So they might try to turn the webcam on. It's just going to say, hey, not working. If it's something, I've seen it with Citrix, if it's not optimized, the webcam might work, but it's just going to be choppy. So it'll be pretty obvious to the user.
Let me give you a couple. As a guy who does this all day, every day, you can tell instantly. Number one, you're like you said, number one, your video either doesn't work or does work. If it doesn't work, all of a sudden, you're probably not optimized. Number two, it's grainy looking, right? You can see that it's grainy looking. Number three, if you're moving and the camera and you have to wait like half a second or more before you see yourself moving in your reflection of the camera, then it's not optimized. If you're talking and you see your mouth, in the camera behind where you're at, it's not optimized. If you drag it around on the screen and the video stays grainy and doesn't decouple from the window you're dragging, it's not optimized. Those are the things I'm trying to get across.
Yeah. I figured it was one of those Andy Whiteside questions where you already had the answer. You're just waiting to see if we answered it correctly.
Well, I was hoping. I mean, look, I don't know about you guys. Chris, it sounds like you're starting to use AVD now and do this. I do it all day, every day. The minute you hit the video button and start talking, whether it's optimized or not. It's obvious. Now, if you're in a low low latency network, you may or may not know. But if you're going to the cloud for your desktop, you're going to know pretty quick.
Yeah, and I guess the story here is there's a proper way to make sure that you have it set up correctly. First of all, configuration-wise, before the user even starts using it. So, is the Zoom VDI client installed properly on the IGEL device? Do you have the firmware? We have like 3 different versions of the Zoom plugin. So in our UCC guide, it basically says, hey, here's the situation. Whatever the version of the Zoom client is in the remote session, the Zoom plugin cannot be higher than that. It always has to be either the same or below. If it's higher, then you'll get some of those experiences you were just describing. And I've definitely seen that before.
Hey, Kristen, real quick, you're talking about the Zoom client on the endpoint device, in this case, IGEL, and then the plugin goes inside the VDI, right?
Reverse of that. IGEL has the plugin. It's weird because the client, generally you'd think endpoint, right? But it's actually the plugin on the endpoint. The client inside of the remote session.
Okay. Good.
So it's, they probably could have named it differently, I suspect, but we have, just like Citrix, we have 3 different workspace app versions with Zoom. And I think this is also true of WebEx too, but for Zoom, we have 3 different versions of the plugin at any given time. So for customers or partners setting this up, it's, making sure that you have as I mentioned earlier, either correctly matching or just below, but never higher. The endpoint client, that can't be higher than what's in the virtual desktop. Otherwise, you'll get bad performance. That's another way to know for sure that something's not right. Again, all this predicated on the fact that the endpoint can handle the offloading. If you forget to check that box, and everything's set up right, then your endpoint probably can't handle it. And that's another thing that you make sure don't forget.
So,
Comes up a lot more often.
So quick note on all this. Teams, for the most part, you don't have to worry about this, man. If Teams is up to date in the VDI and you have IGEL, for the most part, it should just work, right?
Well, I was about to say, in contrast, so Patrick was heading in the settings with Teams. You can actually go up and there's a quick about, and it'll tell you optimize, right? If it's Citrix, it says HDX optimized. If it's AVD, it says AVD media optimized. So that'll tell you that it's offloading. And then obviously it's the performance what you want.
So the answer to my question was yes, it should just work, and you can tell from the about whether it's working or not, right?
Right. It'll tell you that it is being handled. Now then performance could be a variety of things. Maybe there's something in the network, maybe there's endpoint hardware doesn't have enough horsepower, but
just stay with me real quick before we go away from that. So Patrick, do you know if you're using Zoom in a VDI and it's being offloaded, is there an indicator that actually says in Zoom that it's optimized for HDX or Blast or anything? Is there a clear indicator that says it's being optimized?
There is. I wish it was a little easier to find, but it does exist. Yep.
Where's it at?
So it's in the settings. You have to go into the Zoom application settings in your VDI session, and then there's a section there called statistics, and then there's a tab in there called VDI. If you go to there, it'll give you all the details about which plugin version you're using and if it's connected or not.
So Patrick, is that when you're using the session, or that's a precursor to using the session?
I think you can do it either way. So you can do it before you get into a Zoom call, or you can do it on the fly. You can actually go into your settings. I think if you go under view options, actually, no, I think in the background you'd have to do it, but you can do it either way to get that information.
But my real question is, does that say, hey, it should be working? Or does that say, like we have in the Teams actually in the meeting where it says it is working?
Yeah, it's not as clear as the Teams one for sure. It's one thing I wish it was a little more clear. It basically is just going to tell you if it's connected or not. In my experience, if it says connected, it's working. If it doesn't,
I'm looking at it right now. So I don't know if I can share this, but in the Zoom call we're doing now, I went into where it says stop video or something. Let me see if I can share this. But I went into video settings, and then on the left-hand menu, I clicked on statistics, and then you get this menu where you see overall, and then on the far right, there's this thing called VDI, and then it has like a table there. So it says thin client OS version, and it correctly identifies what I'm running, 1107.176. And then it says VDI plugin version, which is 5.10. VDI plugin status is connected. VDI connect mode direct and via VDI client. So that, I guess, is Zoom's way of telling you that it's being optimized.
Okay, that's good. That's what we need.
Yeah.
So that's the indicator, the official indicators. Now, Chris, if you're being optimized in a WebEx or a Zoom or a Teams session, what can you look at in terms of the performance of the virtual desktop to see that it's not consuming local resources?
And here I thought we were in a corporate blog. Honestly, that's a great point. I think
so. You can do it in that same area, Chris. If you go to the overall section, it's going to give you all how much your CPU is being used, your RAM. It's going to give you some good statistics there.
Yeah. So overall, for example, my VDI, it's a Windows 10 multi-session. I've got 32 gigs of memory.
Okay, can you share your screen?
Yeah, let me see if this will show up. Give me a second.
But the real answer in this conversation is you just look at your CPU. If your CPU's doing a lot of processing around Zoom, then you're probably not offloading.
Hang on. Host disabled participant screen sharing. That's why it's not letting me. So if you give me that, I can show you what I'm showing.
There you go.
And perfect. All right. So, all right. Let me just give me a second here.
And then Patrick, while he's doing that, the same thing exists on the endpoint, right? You go look at what does IGEL call its task manager tool under settings?
I usually just, you can go in there. You can go into the task manager in IGEL, or you can go into the terminal and hit top TOP, just type that in, hit enter, and that'll pull up all the real-time, system monitoring.
So question, I don't know if you see this. Do you see the settings menu?
Yep.
Zoom?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if it was showing. So, but yeah, so it's in the settings statistics. This is where we were talking about earlier. There's the overall. So it knows that my endpoint this is an LG all-in-one. It's 2.6 gigahertz, 4 cores. You can see what that is, and then the VDI itself is 32 gigs of RAM. And you can see here it's not taking up much. It's not processing much there. I don't know exactly if there's
Okay, so Chris, does this tell you by process what's using the CPU? Well, actually, it doesn't matter. It tells you the Zoom's only using 2% of the CPU, so therefore it must be optimized.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because I can see it. It's like.
Now, if you want to go a little older school, just bring up Task Manager in the VDI, and you'll be able to see much more detailed information. You don't have to do it, but that's where you would go to look.
Yep. So there's Zoom's meeting. Let's hang on. Hang on. Where'd it go? There we go. Sorry, more details. That's what I'm looking for. And we look at performance. You can see there.
But you were in the right place a minute ago. Processes. Go look at the Zoom process and see that it's not using a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So in general, Zoom would be using 60, 70% if it had its way with the machine. Okay, so in the meantime, at the same time, you could go to your endpoint unit and look at Task Manager there, or in the case of IGEL, you could look at Task Manager. That's actually what IGEL calls it these days. And you could see that you're probably getting a lot of processor utilization on the endpoint. At that point, between what you saw in Zoom or Teams, what the user experience feels like, and then what you're seeing in terms of resources in the VDI or on the endpoint, you should have a good sense of whether or not it's being optimized.
Yeah, and I'm looking here. I just switched in this thing. I switched the VDI. You can see on the left side, plug-in CPU. It's only total overall CPU usage is 13%. And Zoom is taking up 7% of that. So it's not crushing the system for sure. Now, little later today, we're going to have a webinar, tech deep dive with ControlUp, and we'll be able to kind of maybe gig into a little bit more and have a product like that can show you, hey, what is the true performance that we're seeing, and in that situation. So I'm excited about digging into that a little bit later.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. And then you have the world where I live in, where this all worked great last week. I come in as, a non-technical user anymore. And I don't know what changed over the weekend. I didn't change anything. I don't think Patrick changed anything on my IGEL unit. Something's changed inside my VDI world, and none of it works anymore for Zoom.
So, and you're using Citrix, right?
I am in this case. Yeah. And specifically, in this case I am, but not just limited to Citrix. No.
Right. Yeah. But you're doing your Zoom offloading from a Citrix desktop.
Yeah. Look, I'm not asking to solve it. I'm pointing out that there's an ecosystem that all has to work kumbaya. If you want this to work, it's important to know that change when you're doing centralized end user computing, desktop as a service, VDI, all the above. It's a dance. That all has to be in harmony. You can't change the back end without understanding the impact on the solution. You can't change the endpoint without understanding the solution. And you really need to test it all really good. You can't just wait for the CEO of the company to come in Monday and be the one that says, hey, this doesn't work anymore. Which, by the way, it's 9:45 on Tuesday. I still haven't had a chance to open up a help desk ticket and ask what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you want to obviously avoid. Definitely. I mean, I had a meeting yesterday where I mentioned earlier they decided that, hey, we don't want to continue to invest in the on-prem. We're going to go cloud. Well, in this conversation, one of the things that got missed was, does this piece of the puzzle support that move? And nobody knew that it doesn't. And so now we're working through, well, what do we do now?
And here's the reality of that world. If you run Windows on the endpoint, it'll support whatever you throw at it. However, well, just real quick. However, you bring a whole bunch of security and bloatware and junk with you that you may not need, and you want to leave it behind. The next best option in end user computing in the enterprise is, Patrick?
IGEL OS.
That's right. And that's why I'm an IGEL guy, is because all the scars on the knuckles and all the problems that have been solved and all the listening to the end user community, it is number 2 in terms of capability, and you get rid of a whole bunch of that other crap you don't want to bring with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear that a lot, and just, we are still in education mode. I people ask me, like the other day, I was at an event and somebody asked me, what do I do? And I thought about, I was like, how should I answer this? Because I very much am still educating the masses, if you will, on all the things you just mentioned, right? The simplicity of moving to IGEL instead of a Windows OS, and the benefits that come with that, without having all that extra stuff just to secure it so you can actually work. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's use that to segue into our topic for the day, which is LG and others to feature preloaded IGEL OS thin clients at VMware Explorer. And so really what we're talking about here is IGEL over the last 2 or 3 years has really decoupled the IGEL thin operating system from their hardware, and made it so where the thin client operating system from IGEL really can go anywhere you want it to go. At the same time, if you wanted to come on IGEL hardware, you can buy IGEL OS on IGEL hardware and get it just like you always have. But what we're really starting to see is players like LG and Lenovo and several others are starting to make it so where either you directly get it from distribution or you get it through a partner like XenTegra, and it shows up on your door preloaded, ready to go, ready to update, ready to manage, ready to integrate. Chris, what are you seeing in terms of adoption of that type of mindset, where you are literally getting whatever hardware you want with IGEL running on it, not whatever, but many capable devices with IGEL ready to go?
So I'll put it this way, and Patrick probably remembers this. So I've been here just over 4 years, pre and post IGEL ready. So pre IGEL ready, IGEL had already had a great story for repurposing devices. We just didn't have an official program like Ready. And so with the benefit that I've seen post Ready now, and Ready's been out for 2 years now, is the vendors like an LG with nice new hardware or chipsets or whatever. And what that basically is translated to is now our ability to run on some of these from the factory devices. The Linux kernel has benefited in terms of what we're using to be able to support not just what LG has to offer, but other devices from some of these vendors at HP and Lenovo. And we still are out there repurposing devices that haven't officially gone through the validation process by each vendor, but the Linux kernel has benefited. And so it just has expanded what we can be running on. But it's great to know that, LG has quite a bit of options available to you. I have a Gram. I love the Gram. I use it. It's my road machine when I'm out and about. And when I'm here, I got a bigger screen and all that stuff, but it's fantastic. So I think that's probably the bigger thing, is that that program has put in place a very nice process that continues to evolve and get better. And just in the last 9 months, for example, now we're starting to see these vendors where from factory these things ship out already, kind of saving you some time there.
Yeah. So Patrick, how do you see that working, right? So a customer needs to get a unit. Help us understand what their options are in terms of getting the exact, IGEL OS, but on the piece of hardware that fits their need. And what if that hardware doesn't fit their need? What are their options?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of times in the sales process, and when we're engaging with the customer, some things they haven't changed very much in the sense of when we're talking with a new customer, a lot of times they're trying to repurpose what they have. So they might have perfectly good hardware, maybe it's old desktops, old laptops, or even old thin clients. Maybe they're Dell or HP thin clients. They don't like the management, or they're stuck on a certain firmware version because of the hardware they have. So IGEL can kind of open that up, right? So that's kind of usually step one. It's let's repurpose what you can, right? But then step two in that process is always going to be, hey, let's get you standardized on hardware, right? Because eventually those old devices, yeah, you might extend the life of them. Maybe you're getting 3 to 5 years before. Now you're getting 5 to 7 years in your hardware refresh cycle. But at some point they're going to start to die. Motherboards are going to start to fail. Fans are going to go on these things. RAM is going to go, and ultimately we're in a disposable type world. So you get as much life as you can. Then you need to standardize. And I think LG is really one of the partners that we will lead with, right? Because they have so many different form factors, as Chris was mentioning. So we like to lead with really probably the two main hardware vendors that we really lead with is going to be LG or Lenovo. I think Lenovo is doing some pretty cool stuff too, but I think right now LG, man, they went from somebody you would never think of as, we all knew them for their TVs and their monitors, which they've been doing really well for a long time. I'm kind of an LG fanboy as far as TVs go. But their thin client options, the hardware. Chris mentioned the LG Gram. They've got a small form factor, a couple small form factor little thin client devices, and then they're all-in-one devices. The one even on the screen there. They have one in healthcare. It's white. It's got a little Imprivata RFID reader built into it. They've got webcams built in. Most customers can fit in one of those models. And what we find is because they're so purpose-built, similar to the way IGEL's purpose-built for what they do, LG's really purpose-built these devices to live in this world, right? To be an end-user compute device to connect to VDI or desktop as a service running IGEL OS. The IGEL Ready program's done a really great job of this and making it easy to kind of standardize. But LG has some great options once you get to that second step.
And then Patrick, what if what if something officially isn't packaged, productized with the hardware and the software? What's the customer's options then?
So if I think I know, if I understand the question, one thing like with LG specifically, and really our partnership with LG is, let's say you're an IGEL customer. The beauty is you can bundle that LG hardware with IGEL OS already preloaded, right? And then with us, at XenTegra, we can have it, pre-joined to your IGEL Cloud Gateway. So you're just shipping those devices straight to your end users. It kind of takes a lot of that. It's not a tremendous amount of work, but it is time consuming if you're the customer. We can kind of completely alleviate that with our partnership with LG and IGEL. So that's a huge thing.
That wasn't where I was going. However, I like your answer. If you work with a partner like XenTegra and the OS is not bundled with that particular device, we've got ways where we can work ourselves and through our distributors to fix that. And you get what you want when you need it, as you need it. And we just have a supply ready to ship out. But Chris, is there hardware that IGEL officially works with that's not already been bundled as part of the Ready program?
Well, there was on our KB, there's a section on third-party devices that have, generally speaking, been shipped to Germany, for example, to be validated. This is pre-IGEL Ready. So if customers have existing devices, then there was a list that was being maintained where we know like, hey, this Dell device or this HP device, for example, that I don't know how many more of that situation is still happening now that we've got Ready going on. It'll be you find it in our KB, not here. These are the ones that the vendors have officially put through the program, and they continue to add more as they bring more into the ecosystem here. And then of course the community has we're kind of maintaining this spreadsheet. I need to figure out where people, if you're not sure, like, hey, has anybody tested this device with IGEL, and if so, what version? And it could be like a headset or something, right?
But Chris, staying on this topic, so IGEL ready endpoints are the ones I'm showing on the screen here. Do these all come pre-shipped with IGEL, or are these the endpoints?
No, they don't all come pre-shipped. They've been validated. Some of them, the only vendors that I'm aware of that are pre-shipping or Lenovo, LG, and HP, and there's specifics with each one of those as far as what that looks like in terms of how does it get shipped, or we need to probably get probably the IGEL ready folks that manage each of those vendors to get the specifics. I don't have them ready at hand, but
what I'm trying to get across here is I'm on a web page and I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's all these manufacturers with all these different models that are officially certified to run IGEL. They just don't come bundled. So you can buy this hardware, you can buy IGEL software directly or through a partner like us, or not direct, but you can get it through a partner like we'll bundle it together for you, or you can get it quickly, easily installed, or just stick a UD pocket and you're officially supported to run it, right?
Yeah, if you see it here, if you click on one of those all-in-ones that you were looking at here, you should have the specs and the model for that, and you can go.
So if you apply the logic that IGEL is just software that's been certified to run on hardware, is there any other hardware thin client manufacturer that can even come close to touching this many different device types?
My general answer is no. I'm not aware of another program that we've got that's out there very similar to what we're doing here.
Yeah, you're the leader in this space. You're the leader in decoupling the software from the hardware, and then having hardware vendors show up and certify their stuff to work with yours. And at the end of the day, customer gets what I call the Burger King effect. They get it their way.
That's a good analogy. I've never heard it that way. It's been a while since I've the Burger King effect.
I'm hungry all of a sudden. I don't know what's going on here.
All right. Well, guys, I think we've covered it here. And I appreciate you playing along with my Q&A here. But the idea that there's now vendors that are showing up with OS, the IGEL OS loaded, just like they've shown up for years and years and years with Windows, and they always wanted to show up with something Linux on it. There just never was the right version of Linux. IGEL has solved that problem, and you're going to see more and more vendors, hardware vendors, showing up with IGEL Linux, so IGEL OS on devices, ready to plug in and go.
Absolutely. And I think, this is just such, just scrolling through this list is so cool. I mean, just how many hardware vendors are fully supported and saying, hey, stamp of approval, this will work.
Chris, I went to an event last week, right? And one of the things it seems like with your next OS coming out, like I can't figure out what the name is, but it is yet. You guys got to tell us. But a big focus of that is how to take any solution and onboard it quickly and easily, which was already pretty good in the IGEL world, but even easier.
Yeah, the onboarding process, probably the biggest significant difference, and it'll be OS 12, by the way, is the onboarding. When that device boots up, how many steps are involved to get it connected, managed, and set up. And that's being greatly simplified. Especially if a user gets a device and it's not been set up yet, it'll be a very simple process.
And I can tell you, the next time I go to buy a piece of hardware, I'm going to come look at this list first, because I want to make sure I'm buying something that when I stick that UD pocket in for my traveling days, it works great.
Yeah, I mean, that's if we wrap it up, if you are in a scenario where, we've had a few of these where, repurposing their devices, they don't want to do it or they can't do it for different reasons. And now they're looking at new hardware and they want to use IGEL. This is the place to come. Look for what your kind of use cases might be. IGEL can't tell you what Lenovo has in stock, that's where a partner would need to reach out and check with distribution, but this will show you what's been officially validated.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, with that, guys, I'm heading off Toronto tomorrow for IGEL Disrupt up there. Looking forward to seeing people there. Patrick, what do you have going on?
Well, so we've got our ControlUp monthly workshop. Well, IGEL monthly workshop, I should say, featuring ControlUp. So Chris and I will be joining that call here in about a half hour. I'll tell you what, I've been really, really impressed with ControlUp's new solution, and it was part of an acquisition, but Edge DX, I think it was about a year ago. Just unbelievable the amount of monitoring you can get. So we've got that coming up, and then I'm actually flying to Miami for a customer event tonight. So got a pretty busy schedule here. It's good stuff.
That's what we call it, XenTegra, building communities, community building. Love it. Chris, what do you have coming up other than the workshop with Patrick in a few minutes?
I've got we had a breakthrough with one of our key partners. By that I mean technology vendors, and we are rapidly working on that. So I'm not traveling this week to focus on that. More information to share at a later time. Sorry, I'm being cryptic because I can't really talk about it right now, but it's going to be awesome. So
that's all right. Hey, before we wrap up, just proof here. I'm literally using a local Linux IGEL unit on a LG 34-inch all-in-one, running the Zoom session. And Chris is doing it one way, I'm doing it one way, Patrick's doing another way. We're all, drinking our own champagne.
Well, that's the nice thing is if it's somehow, Ron Nair, my colleague, talks about this a lot. If something happens with the VDI, it's nice to have the custom partition option where you can still run that Zoom call. So it's sort of a backup option, but it gives you what you're looking for, right? So
and for the most part, it ain't Windows, and I don't need Windows.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, guys. Appreciate it. We'll do it again next week. Thank you.
Take care.
See you guys.